sync the audio that way. This is what I've been asking people today. Are things good? Like, are things good?
In what sense?
Just like in the sense of, like, society, especially in the U.S., because that's kind of where we live. It's hard to know if things are good elsewhere. But, like, are things, would you say, sufficient? Or do they need some sort of systematic change?
I think there needs to be a systematic change. I think morally we're deviating from anything that's kind of important.
Okay. So what does that systematic change look like? Because it is dangerous, you know, like, how do you deal with the fears of breaking something that might not be broken?
I don't know. That's a difficult question.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone has a right answer yet either.
Where should we start?
Addressing and acknowledging that there's issues instead of pretending that there's nothing wrong.
Okay. And where would you say lies the solution to those issues?
First, I mean, I think everyone says it, but there has to be unity.
Okay.
But that's almost near impossible to come to.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're almost stuck in like this infinite loop of nothing's ever going to happen.
Okay, this sort of disunity, this disjunction.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we solve that? Like, how do we become more unified? Is it, because some people, it seems, have beliefs that oppose each other in a sort of uncompromisable sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we don't have to bring up those particular things because it could get a little bit controversial, but
right.
But you probably know sort of what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
So how do we bring that into unity if there's a kind of uncompromisable nature to it?
It's hard. You just have to try to get people to admit, one, that there's issues.
Okay.
Acknowledge the other side and try to build from there. But if everyone always stays on this point of view where they're always going to be right and not even open the doors, then you're really never going to change.
Okay, so maybe it lies at the individual level to cultivate a sort of humility in order to, you know, figure out where you might be misled and what views you can adjust and how you can act differently. And then does it kind of scale up from there?
Yeah, but like you said, it's individual and then you have to move on. It can't be some organization and then we start progressing from there.
Okay, so it can't be like an organization that kind of top down fixes everything?
I mean, maybe you can try that way, but at the end of the day, no change is going to happen until the individual sees it, and then it goes from there.
Okay, and should we just stop there? Like, this is a question I asked somebody earlier. Like, it sounds pretty nice if we could just have a bunch of distributed communities where people feel like they are growing and they have a sense of belonging. Like, do we need to do anything more than that? Like, once we have a sort of distributed, like, local communities where people feel they're a part of?
If we could live in peace that way, then it's fine. But if there's not peace, then that's not really.
Okay. And what is there not being peace? What does that mean?
Not being able to compromise or to work together on certain things, see each other's point of view. I think just arguing or like physical violence is also one thing.
Okay. Okay. So if there's still physical violence, if there's still arguing, but won't there always be arguing?
I think there's always going to be arguing at little things, but on the global level, there's not necessarily always going to be that intense violence.
So basically the goal is world peace.
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, but how are we ever going to attain that?
Okay, so do you think it is attainable?
Where we are now, all humans, no.
Okay. Do you think it's even attainable in a theoretical sense?
Yeah, in a theoretical sense for sure. And that, like I said before, just it's based on the individual acknowledging their faults, opening the doors to others, whatever the word is.
So if everyone is able to do that, then world peace would be achieved?
100%.
And how does one go about doing that? is it just like a realization that they want to make the world a better place? Like how do they cultivate that kind of virtue?
I think it just comes from also just reading other
Okay.
philosophers and things like that, and putting your mind in that space, and then that's going to allow you to become awake.
Okay, so to come awake, and awake to the degree that you have this vision of world peace that you're pursuing with your virtue.
It
Is
could
that-
be that, or just, I think, just being aware of other people, their beliefs, and being able to live with their beliefs as well.
Okay,
It doesn't have to just mean that world peace, but
Okay.
maybe simultaneous.
and it seems like, and you can disagree with the question. That's might also be part of the question. It seems like in order to do that, we need to have a common narrative that we're all living according to.
Yeah.
Like we have to wake up every day and say, the story that I'm living out is that I'm trying my best to join this sort of collective peace.
Yeah.
So how exactly can we find that? Because you have disjunct groups with different religious beliefs that have a particular narrative, or you have different political beliefs that carry with them a particular narrative. So how do we get on the same narrative? Do we use like scientific empiricism and say like, okay, let's just verify all our truth this way, and then we can build the narrative from there? Or do we have a sort of top-down, like, okay, let's just pick this guy or this woman, and or this group, and they're kind of in charge, or like how do we do that?
I think there has to be not necessarily like one particular person, but like an organization, maybe, and not even that, but just a group or a power strong enough to be able to implement like the virtues.
Okay,
Or
so
to spread the word,
so it is in the sense of like an organization that is in charge,
spreading the word.
spreading the word. It's more communication.
Not like you can't like force people
Yeah.
to force people to be awake. That's never.
So it can't be forced. It has to be a sort of
Voluntary.
consensual arrangement
Yeah.
where everyone has to see the vision and choose to pursue it.
Mhm.
And you think that the narrative issue will be resolved just based on the communication? Like
Yeah.
people will just start to see what you're talking about
Yeah.
based on the communicating to
Yeah.
them in a
And
particular way?
this is as long as they're open spiritually, I think that something can happen. Maybe that's just like a naive way of thinking about it. But
Okay. Yeah. And so you think is anybody in control? Like how would we, is it, that's,
in a
that's the question.
perfect world, and in the most naive world as well,
Yeah.
no one's in control,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it just goes to like other philosophers or like political theorists, what they say. I think it was like Locke or Hobbes or something, but just like live. You don't have to be under
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah, there needn't be any authority, and we can all just kind of decide to be compassionate and pursue this sort of collective peace. Okay. That sounds quite beautiful. I guess I'm just wondering like what you do about evil. Like what do you do about like evil people or evil tendencies or even like psychopathic behavior? And I guess you could theoretically have
I guess I could ask you the same question, like how often do you see that, like even on this campus? Like when you look around, I don't think you see it that often.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think that has like where do you put the I don't know, burden of responsibility for that? Is it do you think humans are intrinsically good, or we've just been like socialized in a particular way to allow for a pretty peaceful society?
It depends also on what you define as good.
That's true.
So what do you define as good?
By good, I was trying to kind of use your sense of like, look around, people aren't hurting each other
Yeah.
and they're being reasonably civilized.
I guess then good is the absence of evil. So the absence of like being malicious, physically hurting somebody, or just, I guess, emotionally hurting people or something
Yeah.
like that, or undermining them.
Okay. Yeah. So in that definition, how would we like place the burden of responsibility as to why we can look around and it seems like everyone's acting pretty good. Like do we put that burden on the government system that we have in place where, you know, maybe psychopaths or enough of them are put in prison as to where it doesn't affect us or something like this? Or is it just people are generally good creatures and it's just kind of playing itself out that way?
I think I'm just confused on your question of the burden.
Oh yeah, by burden I mean like what is responsible for this idea that you talked about, how people are acting pretty good?
It's good. Oh, for what's responsible for people acting good?
Yeah.
I
Is
think
it
that's almost just human nature.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So human nature is generally good
Yeah.
and it's just kind of playing itself out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess in order to find this collective peace, do we just have to embrace our true nature?
Yeah. And not fall into things such as greed or anything like that.
Okay. Fair enough. And do we do that just by sheer discipline? Like what if someone's born with this sort of tendency to hurt people or a sort of tendency towards greed or a tendency to steal things? In order to pursue their true humanity and kind of join this vision, do they have to take any steps to do that? Or is it like, maybe I guess it would relate to the communication sort of thing? Like it just seems like it's easy to like say, but sometimes it's really hard to do. Like someone might have a tendency to like a violent tendency or a tendency towards greed or lust or any of these things. Like how does someone rid themselves of that? How do they contrive the virtue in order to pursue that kind of truest humanity that you're talking about?
Examining their own life. I mean, I don't know if you've ever read Socrates or anything like that,
Sure.
or Plato, but he says, like the famous quote is, "The unexamined life is not worth living."
Okay.
You
Yeah.
just have to sit down, examine your own life, and the hardest part is getting that catalyst and starting to do that.
Yeah.
And maybe your next question should be like, oh, then what starts it? But you can never force someone to start it.
Okay.
Maybe it's just by providing information
So
and trying to lead them on that path, but you can never force them.
so you provide them the idea that it's possible and the information in that sense, and then it's a matter of choice.
Yep. 100%.
It's a matter of that person choosing to be virtuous
Yep.
or to take the steps to
100%.
become better.
100%.
And it starts at the individual level and it's facilitated by some form of communication. Should it be facilitated by something else? Like should there be some programs or something, or like some like education system that focuses on something? I don't know.
I mean, as long as you just, say being evil is bad, treat other people with kindness, everything like that, I think that's fine. But
Yeah.
this is all going to be like very delusional, but in the perfect world, we could operate this way.
Yeah. Fair enough. And you think it's possible?
In a perfect world, but
Okay.
right now in our world, I think it would
Yeah.
take a lot of work to get there.
That reminds me of this story my dad told me when he was trying to get somewhere in his car. He was like asking somebody on the side of the street, like, how do you get to the neighborhood over there? Oh, you can't get there from here. You know? Oh, you can't get there from here. Well, then where do you go to get there? What? Can't get there from here. You know? So where do we go to get there? To start going? I guess we already answered that question to some degree. I don't know. Is there anything else that you would want to flesh out with that?
No, I think I'm content with how the conversation went, to be honest.
That's good. Fair enough. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it was fun.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Of course.
What's your show called?
It's Let's Question.
Let's question.
Yeah, so I'm just asking questions.
Okay.
Trying to get underneath things a little bit, I guess.
All right.
You know. So let's see. Are things good? Like, are things good in society? And I guess we can't just ask about the whole world. So let's start with the nation. Are things good here in the U.S.?
I think it's leaning towards getting better for sure.
Okay.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Feelings are definitely everywhere at the moment with a lot of people. I feel like a lot of anxieties going around about being unsure about all the things, not having great options about many of those important things, and then
Yeah.
I don't know. Definitely some things are changing, so we'll see how it goes.
Fair
It'll be
enough.
fun.
What's the best mechanism for change? Like, is it educating children differently? Is it educating college students differently? Is it just policy in general? Like, we just have to vote particular policies in? And
Could start at school and then go into policy.
okay, so kind of maybe a little of both in that regard.
Yeah, totally. Trickles down up into the uppers from there. But I mean, just having chats like these are always important too.
Okay, so do you think like communication is our biggest
Totally.
mechanism for change?
Totally lacking there
Okay.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Things like this, super helpful, super beneficial. I run across dudes on the street all the time with a microphone who are like, yo, we're doing a podcast, we're interviewing all these people about all this. And it's a great mechanism for change. I definitely believe in it.
Fair enough. Okay, so communication. What should we be communicating about?
Everything. Anything.
Everything and anything, yeah.
No restrictions, no limits.
Okay.
If you
So-
feel like you're outside of your bounds, then maybe don't talk about it.
Oh, okay. Well, then, so there's certain limits, like maybe personal limits.
Put your own limits on there wherever you feel comfortable, and don't be where you don't.
That's fair. Like, there's a sort of politeness aspect to it. Like,
Yeah, you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but you also don't want to
Yeah.
talk about something you don't know about, or get into a conversation that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah. So there's a sort of discomfort that might come into it. But okay, that's an interesting rabbit hole. Because do you think you can ever really have like meaningful conversation without being a little bit uncomfortable?
Totally.
You think you can?
Well, I mean, all conversations, sometimes good or bad, are going to make somebody uncomfortable. I mean, at least
Okay.
at some point. But if you are the kind of person to just yank yourself out of there as soon as you get uncomfortable, then that might be the continuance of not promoting change and
Yeah.
not having the hard conversation. So maybe there is a bit of
Okay.
having a bit of a tough piece of there and being a little uncomfortable and learning how to be
Yeah.
comfortable being uncomfortable.
Fair enough. Okay. So the biggest mechanism for change, I suppose, in your view, would be communication, which I think is very fair.
Yeah.
So how do we? What are we changing? Like what do we want to change into?
Could be just like talking better. I mean, one of the things that I've heard this comedian I listen to a lot, Joe Rogan, one of the things on his podcast that he says a lot is the solution to bad speech is better speech.
Yeah.
So if there's just a whole lot of people saying the same things and it all sounds wrong or bad, then get some new ideas. Freshen it up.
Okay. Yeah. Like you have to balance between like familiarity and
Yeah, hearing the things that
unfamiliarity.
you want and hearing the things that you don't want to hear. That could also possibly be true. And then there's those three things of your side, my side, and what's really happening.
Okay. Yeah, your side, my side, and what's really happening, and we have to admit that neither of us has a model sufficient enough to encapsulate the reality.
Totally. Except for that thing. And then it's up to them.
Oh, the viewers.
Totally.
Yeah.
And
So-
the viewers also being whoever's seeing the situation happen. Somebody has a car accident, you're a viewer in that situation. You're a witness to help them out.
Okay, yeah. So in that sense, if we draw that out, would you say the most sophisticated intelligence would be the collective intelligence?
Totally.
Okay. So if we communicate effectively enough, then we can take advantage of that, essentially?
Hopefully we can.
Okay. So there's this collective intelligence. Do you think, like, obviously groups can go astray sometimes.
Absolutely, yeah. You get those echo chambers, people go off on different sides, things people wouldn't usually agree with. Totally.
Do you think in order for that collective intelligence to work correctly, there has to be something that unites us? you know, like a nation or a religion or something, or
It doesn't have to be a
just humanity
specific
in
thing.
particular.
Usually could be just, hey, we're all people.
yeah,
And that seems to be a pretty strong connection between a lot of people, is like, I'm a dude, you're a dude, so are they. Like that,
yeah,
the fact of what you look like and all that stuff doesn't and shouldn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's not that big a deal. Let's sit down and have a chat, and if we got an issue, we can figure something out.
yeah. So there's the common ground of humanity that you think if we all come together, but there has to be a form of a certain kind of compassion in that too, because
Absolutely.
if you come together,
You gotta want to do it a little bit.
you gotta want to do it, and you can't just be only in it for yourself,
Totally.
right? So why should, like, can you blame someone for only being in it for themselves?
Not really.
You can't.
Not really.
Okay.
Depends. You don't want to stomp on anybody else's toes. You don't want to crush somebody else trying to be in it for yourself. You
Yeah.
want to be, if you're in it for yourself, you want to be in it for a good reason at least.
Okay. Well, then you're not just in it for yourself.
You may not just be in it for yourself then, yeah. So
Yeah.
if you can help yourself and help somebody else and know it, then that's good. But sometimes you just got to be a little selfish sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that.
Fair enough. So, in this sort of idea of everyone communicating more effectively, do you think it would work if a majority of the people are in it for a sort of selfish gain? Or do you think there has to be like this?
It's not beneficial if a majority of the people are, but it seems to be the case now.
Like, it seems to be the case now that a
That
majority
is
of people
that
are.
a majority of the people are in it for themselves for very selfish reasons and not looking towards
Okay.
a mutually beneficial arrangement.
Okay, so one of the keys here is not only communication, but also that people have a sort of attitude of compassion to some degree, or like being mutually beneficial to some degree.
Totally, greed's everywhere, my man.
Yeah.
I've seen it in myself sometimes, and I hate it.
Okay, yeah. So how do we cultivate that virtue? Of like,
Let me know if you find out.
okay,
Let
yeah.
me know if you find out. That's crazy. I don't know. I've never thought about that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Fair
I haven't
enough.
thought about that. I do actually got a skedaddle though. I appreciate the time, my man.
I appreciate you too,
Of
man.
course. Good chat.
Good chatting, Bo. Cool. So, are things okay?
Things okay?
Are things good?
Things are good, I'd say, personally.
Okay. Are things good, like, in society, would you say? Or just in the world in general? Just like, are things, would you say, like, things are pretty chill?
I'd say it's pretty complicated, honestly. Some areas where I say it would be chill, and some areas where I say it wouldn't be.
That's a good answer. Do you think it's pretty good here, though?
I'd say it's definitely good. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Do you think, like, cosmically speaking, there's a certain, I don't know, underlying disjunct? Or do you think, like, it will be, it's as good as it really, you know, will be, or, you know, maybe it'll get better, but, you know, it'll just always be either pretty good, or maybe if it gets complicated, like you're saying. But, you know, is there an underlying disjunct that needs to be cured somehow?
I truly have no clue, honestly. It's
Yeah.
I hope things get better. I won't lie, around the whole world and the cosmos and everything else in between.
Yeah. I think I'm just getting at that. There's this like Christian idea I've interacted with sometimes where people talk about like the brokenness of the world. It's like a big I would say concept kind of floating around society, that there's this like disjunct underneath, and there's like a solution that you need. Would you subscribe to that idea?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Are you yourself religious?
I'm not like practicing religious. I believe
Okay.
that there is a God and things like that, but
Okay.
I myself have not been practicing, so.
Okay, so I guess would you subscribe to the idea that there still remains a sort of disjunct underneath the world in the form of a sort of brokenness, or would you say like after, I don't know if you subscribe to like Christian ideas, but would you say like after Christ things are now good, like things are good now?
I'd say after Christ things are good, but there is still an imbalance, and like things wrong with the world. I won't
Okay.
lie about that.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So I'll have to go somewhere else then. So you subscribe to a sort of Christianity. I guess why would you? How would you articulate why things aren't as good as they might be? Like, how would you answer that question if someone asked it of you?
So it's saying like what I would do to improve things,
Like,
or
why aren't things as good as they might be, given that there's a God, given that Christ came?
honestly, I have no clue.
Okay. Good answer.
Yeah, I don't know everything in the world, sadly, and probably never will. But just here to live and learn.
Fair enough, man. Okay. So, fair enough. Well, in that case, what makes you, are you convicted about your Christian beliefs based on like a scientific approach, or is it more of like a conviction or a heart approach?
It is kind of hard, I won't lie. Man of science, I'm studying physics right now, but the idea of evolution versus Adam and Eve and things like that, they always clash together, and you have to pick a side. It's no gray zone, so
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to, live in both worlds without trying to choose one side or the other.
Okay, so would you say like your Christian beliefs never really bleed over into your understanding of science?
I try not to let them be.
Okay, then like do you think you would need to prove Christianity scientifically in order to justify a belief in it, or do you think it's different?
I think it's different, personally. I don't believe you need to prove anything. You just need to believe that there is a God, and you got to believe that there is another purpose for you.
Okay, would you say that you believe that there's a God?
I do believe there is one.
Okay, and do you think that God can be like demonstrated scientifically, or he just altogether is in a different sort of realm?
I'd say in a different sort of realm, honestly.
That's
I don't
fair.
think there's any way of proving if there is a God or isn't, truly.
Okay, that's fair. Do you think a Christian like yourself can believe in evolution and still maintain their Christianity?
It's a hard question, honestly. It's like, I do want to believe as much as possible that the Bible said everything that was true, but at the same time, everybody has pointed to evolution, and there's so much backing it up. It's kind of hard to which side to choose.
Yeah. So I guess you don't think that someone can believe in evolution and still be a Christian?
Oh no, I believe that a person that believes in evolution can still be Christian.
But you don't see that in yourself.
It's hard, really. I mean, like, it depends on the day. It's like, some days I believe that there was an Adam and an Eve, and that's where we came from. And then there are some days where I think evolution might have actually just been the start of us.
So it depends on the day. Interesting.
Yeah.
So would you say the whole story of Adam and Eve should be taken in a sort of mechanistic sense, almost like the theory of evolution, or should it be interpreted differently? Kind of like the way that God stands above science in a certain respect.
It's a hard question, honestly. I don't think I can say for certain whether or not somebody should believe in one thing or another, and it's hard for a lot of things like that, so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I'm just asking like this kind of debate in your mind that is probably a little bit uncomfortable at times, of like, okay, evolution or the story in Genesis. And yet when I kind of asked if God can be proven scientifically, you told me, well, he sort of is in a different realm. Why wouldn't you move the story of Adam and Eve into that realm too?
Honestly, I don't know. There's no scientific backing of that story or anything like that, and I can't say for certain whether or not it happened, sadly. And as much as I don't want to say that, what do you call it? I want to believe what I want to, but at the same time, people always try to convince you it's one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, if that story didn't happen in a sort of mechanistic sense, do you think you can still be a Christian, but say like, hey, this part of the Bible is a little sketchy. I don't really believe that, but I believe these parts. Like, can you pick and choose, or is it kind of like a, one or the other sort of thing?
The way I always define Christianity would be the belief that there is a God and that Jesus did die for our sins. That's the way I personally do view it, but then again, everybody has their own interpretation of how things work. Say, somebody might not believe, if I don't believe this part, then I can't be Christian.
Okay, so you see Christianity as those kind of two propositions, and you got those down, but you might not subscribe to the kind of mechanistic interpretation of Genesis, or the fact that it like happened in a certain sense. Maybe even like the story of Moses, that kind of stuff. Do you think that's all kind of up in the air too?
I personally do believe in the story of Moses and all that. It's a bit hard. There's some areas where I have to believe that it did happen. I've written accounts, everything like that, but then again, everything could easily be fabricated, but I just choose not to believe that.
Okay.
I hope not, either.
You choose not to believe what?
People will always say that there's proof against everything, like,
oh yeah,
what do you call it? Jesus wasn't born
somewhere,
or didn't die somewhere. He didn't actually die. He just stayed in a tomb. People have their different accounts of everything and try to sway your mind to one position or the other.
Okay, but so do you think believing in those two propositions, that God exists and Christ died on the cross and was raised again, I suppose that's part of it. Do you think those two, like just believing that those are true, is that enough, or is there something else that you need besides just believing that they're true?
I believe you also do need to be true to yourself and true to your beliefs. I don't believe that you need to believe wholeheartedly in the Bible. I understand that you need to believe in many parts of it, but say, losing phrasing, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. There's no pressure. Probably got like 6 or 7 viewers right now. So.
All right, nice. Hey, it's all cool, man. All right, let's see. Yeah, it slipped my mind.
Oh, it's okay.
All right.
So you don't have to believe the entire Bible in order to be a Christian. That's kind of where we're at now.
I believe you need to believe in many parts of it, but I don't believe you have to believe wholeheartedly into it.
Okay, what would it look like to believe wholeheartedly into it?
Wholeheartedly, that's that word, would mean that is absolute fact. You have to live completely by it, and nothing else matters for it. Say it's take every word for what it is.
Okay, like a completely and utterly literal interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm.
So your solution would be, hey, I can believe certain parts of the Bible literally, but I don't want to believe the whole thing literally.
I hope to. I wish to believe the whole thing, but years of believing in science and stuff like that, I've only got into Christianity during COVID and things like that.
Okay.
So I kind of still have difficulty trying to wrap my head around everything, and still getting there.
So I suppose that you came to Christianity out of a lack of meaning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hard times, and found out it was a good area to go into.
Well, that's a really real thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really real thing. Okay. Well, what would you make of someone that sees these stories as true, but just not true in the sort of scientific, like mechanistic sense?
I still believe them to be Christians, and I believe to treat everybody as equals, as a person, rather than seeing yourself as holier than thou or things like that. So I believe people can believe whatever they wish to, and I don't think I should impose on what they believe.
Okay. Well, if someone believes the story in Genesis, for example, and I don't think you can believe the entire Bible like this, but certain stories, they just take as a sort of pattern of creation, as opposed to believing it as a like sort of historical account, almost in the same sense as you'd use in court, you know. Like, do you think them saying Genesis is true in the sense of a pattern of creation, like a cosmic pattern of like how consciousness works, how society works, those sort of things, as a pattern and a guideline that explains the underlying functions, almost like a philosophical, metaphysical foundation, rather than like a kind of historical proposition? Like, do you think them saying, and I hope I'm not being too confusing.
Don't worry about it, man. I'm getting like bits and pieces. I'm not the best,
Yeah.
but I'm understanding it.
Them just seeing it as a sort of foundation, like a story that they can live out in an embodied way, and rather than seeing it as like a historical proposition that they kind of have to believe in a mechanistic sense, like this happened the same way like I brushed my teeth this morning happened. Like, do you think them saying it's true is valid, or do you think, and I know you just talked about you don't want to judge other people, you're not in the position to do so, which is perfectly fair. I'm just wondering, like, if that's even the way you see truth, like if they can say this is true in that way and you would even take that seriously.
I take everybody's opinion seriously in that if somebody says that they believe Adam and Eve happened and things like that, I would wholeheartedly listen to their stories, listen to what they have to say, and I'd try my best to see if I can reach out and grasp onto the same concept that they do.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to get at like they don't believe Adam and Eve like happened in like if you had a tape recorder you would see them and you'd see the snake talk to her and everything like in that sense. But
okay.
they believe it happened in the sense of it, like it's a good story to build your psyche off of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I'm starting to get what you mean.
Like it happened, like the patterns that it's illustrating are like universal patterns.
So almost like rather than just a story, it's almost like a metaphor for things like sort of that. Is that what you're trying to get at?
Yeah, like certain people would see the world of metaphor, if you will, but almost in a deeper sense, the world of like pattern as like a higher form of reality, almost like a mathematical proof, you know, exists in a way that we can't put under a microscope, but it's like this pattern that's in a sense maybe above us or something like that. Depends on how you think about it, but like, do you think seeing it as real in that sense rather than as real as like the camcorder thing, is that valid, or is that like a confusion of terms?
Honestly, now that you mention it, I've never actually thought about it that way.
Oh yeah.
That's a hard one, actually. Apologies for it, by the way, but
Oh, what do you apologize for?
I'll just, what do you call it? Like, not fully. I'm not I'm not the best with grasping concepts whenever somebody explains them to me. So, I'm getting like a little bit of what you're saying, but I'm not the best with that type of stuff.
Yeah. What do you have any like questions that I could help flesh out the question I'm asking?
So you're meaning that, let's say the story of Adam and Eve, you're meaning it more as in like, rather than the story itself, say, built upon like man, woman, snake, it's just trying to think of the right words. That slipped my mind. Apologies for that.
No worries. No,
Right.
no apologies. Do you wanna keep going, or?
It's completely up to you.
Fair enough,
Still
yeah.
got nowhere to be yet.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm really just asking, like, because asking about the different kinds of what you can consider truth. Like, do you think there's only one way to think about what is true? Like, and what is true can only be considered to be like something scientifically provable, or something that like, you know, happened in this causal kind of sense? Or is there a different way to understand truth? I don't know.
I always,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I somewhat get it. It's I believe that everybody has their own opinion and their own beliefs. So
Yeah.
I don't think we should take away, say, somebody believes this, it means they're not valid. None of that's true, so they won't say.
Yeah. Because there's kind of two trains here. There's the scientific way of verifying truth would be like to replicate something in an isolated study, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what you're talking about is sort of this perspectival truth, like somebody has a perspective, and you don't want to like, and you feel like there's something about that perspective that holds, even if it's not related to a replicated study. Is that what you're kind of saying?
In a sort of way, yeah.
Okay. Do you think there's a way to verify the perspectival knowing in a way where you're not just like leaving it ambiguous, like anybody can have any perspective they want, or is there like a set of correct perspectives?
I don't believe there's just a complete set of correct beliefs or things like that. I believe that it's really is complicated, considering we actually don't truly know 100% like what belief truly is in a sort of way. Everybody has their own way of thinking of what belief is. Everybody has their own way of doing things, and
Yeah.
as you said before, there's no way we can prove it with an isolated incident or isolated replication of events. And because it was more than 2,000 years ago, we actually truly don't know what happened, and
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
hard to say.
Yeah, but like history can't be verified in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can't be replicated. You can't just bring it all back and look at it.
Yeah, there's no way to go back and see, oh, that happened, or anything like that. It's
Okay.
happened, and we just got to choose if we believe that's what happened, or if maybe it didn't.
Go ahead.
I personally believe that it did.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we're almost like choosing what we should remember, you know, even as a society, or like the story we're telling ourselves and where, like, what our life means.
Mhm.
Something like that.
Yeah. History can be written by anybody. Anybody can write whatever they want, and we either can believe or not believe it. And sometimes, like, say back then, there's no way of verifying 110% that this happened or this happened. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's no way to verify it in a scientific replicated sense. And so there's a sort of remembering, there's a choosing to remember. And so like what is our relationship to reality? Like, do we make reality in part in our brain based on what we choose to remember or what we choose to pay attention to, or is there a sort of reality outside of ourselves that we are passively receptive to?
Never thought of it that way. I don't know, actually.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah, there are many things I don't know. I'm still practicing and still getting through everything and
Yeah.
trying to figure out my way through life and all that. So
Yeah.
I can't say for certain what that means and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not making much sense maybe with that question.
No, I think you're wording it really well. I'm just not the guy that, would understand it 110%.
Oh, it's okay. I studied psychology here,
Oh, nice.
and so I was always wrestling with the question of if we create reality in our minds, or if there's something we're receiving that's objective, right? And I think it might be a trick question, because it can never be one or the other, I would say. Like, if it's all in my mind, then why am I not in perfect control of what happens? And if it's all outside of me, then that introduces seemingly another group of issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then, okay, what is the deal with optical illusions, or why does it seem as though our perceptual faculties are built in such a way as to perceive the world in a human way rather than just a unsubjective kind of camcorder way? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
we seem to be, our perspective and our perception seems inextricably human, but also there has to be something outside of us that isn't just contrived in our minds. So there's a kind of tug of war in that question, I would say. And so I almost think it's better not to pick one way or the other. It might have been a kind of a trick question in a certain sense. And so I apologize if it was.
I didn't feel tricked. I honestly, the way you worded that was beautifully worded. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh yeah.
I understood a lot more now. Sorry for earlier, but yeah.
Well, these things are complex.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you relate your Christianity to your daily life?
The way I always thought of Christianity, the way I always believed it, is being true to yourself and to others, spreading positivity, kindness, and
Okay.
not being rude to others and things like that. And I understand that's not everybody's belief in Christianity. Everybody has their own interpretation of it, but
Okay.
that's the way I always viewed it.
And do you feel like you have a personal relationship with God?
I'm still very new, so I believe that he loves me and I love him, but I do believe I still need to build on it slowly but surely, but
Okay.
I do believe.
So have you felt ever like a sort of relational closeness with God, or your conception of God? Have you felt that? Or has it always felt a little bit far away?
Kind of a mix of both, honestly. It's like you never know if he's there. It's like you never seen him, you never know what he's like. But the thing is, say 4 years ago, dark time, COVID and things like that, I'd say I felt probably one of the closest connections I've ever felt with God, and
Yeah.
that was probably the moment where I was like, I need to start doing things different.
Yeah, so that feeling of closeness, what is God like? How did you sense him? Not that you can fully encapsulate him, but how did you sense him? Was he sort of like a being, or was it like a higher sense of transcendence, or was it how would you explain that experience?
I'd probably say that, I said before, I'd say it's kind of both. You almost feel connected like a human to him, but then again, I also understand that he is higher, but
Okay, yeah, that's a good answer too. So this sort of higherness that's mixed almost contradictorily, I guess, with the humanness that you feel. There's the and or. That might be a intimation of the Trinity almost. Or yeah. And so I guess what stops you from trying to see the scriptures like that? Or do they just seem like unjustifiable with what you know about modern science?
It's pretty hard. I'd say that with so many years of learning science and even going and wanting to make a major into it now, it's hard to like truly just see like half the things happening. And I understand that thousands of years ago and is the power of God, so I can't really say for certain with 100% certainty that it did or did not happen.
Yeah. Well, I encourage you to be open-minded about the way truth might, like the form that truth might take and the way you might interact with it.